In the 1960s, our seniors made 5-ingredient suppers that mattered. Their work in the kitchen didn't just fill a plate, they created complete meals using one pantry staples. These 30 forgotten suppers may sound plain today, but they helped seniors when cooking alone felt hard. Let's rediscover 30 old-fashioned suppers grandmas made for themselves without breaking their spirit. SOS on Toast got its military nickname, but became a beloved quick supper for seniors living alone who needed something warm and filling fast. Grandma tore dried beef into small pieces and rinsed it under cold water to remove excess salt. She melted butter in a small saucepan, whisked in flour to make a roux, then gradually added milk while stirring until it thickened into smooth, creamy gravy. The dried beef went into the gravy and heated through for a few minutes. She ladled this generously over toasted bread on a plate. This single-serving supper stretched a small jar of dried beef because the cream sauce made it rich and satisfying. The entire meal came together in under 10 minutes, perfect for evenings when cooking elaborate dinners felt like too much effort. The warm, creamy dish was easy to eat and digest, gentle on sensitive stomachs. This proved that one person could enjoy a proper hot supper without needing to cook for a crowd or waste leftovers. Budget salmon cakes turned 1 can of salmon into 2 filling patties, perfect for a senior cooking alone who wanted protein without waste. Grandma drained the salmon and picked through it to remove bones, then flaked it into a bowl. She added 1 beaten egg and enough crushed crackers to hold everything together, mixing gently. A small diced onion went in for flavor. She shaped the mixture into 2 flat patties and fried them in oil for 3 minutes per side until golden and crispy. These salmon cakes provided complete protein and omega-3s in an easy-to-chew form that didn't require a knife to cut. The crispy outside and tender inside made them satisfying without being heavy. She served them with a squeeze of lemon or a dollop of tartar sauce if she had it. This proved that canned fish could become a proper supper for one without needing elaborate preparation or creating waste from unused portions. Before we move on, many of you asked in the comments where to find these recipes. We even received tons of email too, so we published these recipes on our website. The link is in the description. Let's continue. Warm milk toast became the ultimate comfort supper when Grandma needed something gentle and soothing that required almost no effort to prepare. She warmed whole milk in a small saucepan with a spoonful of sugar and pinch of salt until steaming but not boiling. She lightly toasted bread until warm and golden, then placed it in a shallow bowl. She poured the hot sweetened milk over the toast, letting it soak until soft and easy to eat with a spoon. A pat of butter melted on top added richness. This single-serving supper was incredibly easy to digest, perfect for upset stomachs or evenings when appetite was poor. The warm milk was soothing and sleep-inducing, making it ideal for late suppers. The entire preparation took less than 5 minutes from start to finish. This proved that the simplest ingredients could create the most comforting meals when cooking for one person who needed gentle nourishment. Before we move, simple poached egg plate turned fresh eggs into an elegant single-serving supper that felt special without requiring much effort or cleanup. Grandma brought a small pot of water to a gentle simmer and added a splash of vinegar. She cracked an egg into a small cup first, then gently slid it into the simmering water. The egg poached for about 3 minutes until the white was set, but the yolk stayed soft and runny. She lifted it out with a slotted spoon and placed it on toasted whole-grain bread. Salt and pepper seasoned it perfectly. The runny yolk acted as built-in sauce when cut, soaking into the toast and making every bite rich and flavorful. This provided complete protein and was incredibly easy to digest. The entire supper came together in under 10 minutes with minimal cleanup. This proved that one egg could become a satisfying supper when prepared properly and served on good toast. Quick tuna noodle bake scaled down the classic casserole into a small dish perfect for one person without creating days of leftovers. Grandma boiled a handful of egg noodles until tender, then drained them. She mixed them with one drained can of tuna, a small can of cream of mushroom soup, and a handful of frozen peas in a small baking dish. The mixture baked at 350 F for 20 minutes until bubbling. This single-serving casserole provided protein, starch, and vegetables all in one dish without needing multiple pots or complicated preparation. The creamy sauce kept everything moist and flavorful. The entire meal could be eaten directly from the baking dish, minimizing cleanup. This proved that classic casseroles could be made for one person without waste, providing a hot, complete supper that satisfied without creating unwanted leftovers that would go bad before being eaten. These 5 quick suppers show how 1950s grandmas turned simple ingredients into complete meals for one. From creamed beef to tuna bake, each recipe proved that cooking alone didn't mean going hungry or wasting food. Goldenrod eggs on toast transformed hard-boiled eggs into something special when Grandma wanted a pretty single-serving supper. She hard-boiled 2 eggs, then separated the yolks from the whites. The whites got chopped finely while the yolks were set aside. She made a quick cream sauce with butter, flour, and milk, then folded in the chopped egg whites. She toasted bread and placed it on a plate, then ladled the creamy egg white mixture over it. The bright yellow yolks got crumbled over the top like golden snow, creating a beautiful presentation. This single serving looked elegant enough for company, but was simple enough for a quiet evening alone. The combination of creamy sauce, tender egg whites, and rich yolk, crumbles with soft toast underneath, made every forkful satisfying. This proved that even when cooking for one, presentation mattered and made meals feel special. Bologna and bean skillet combined sliced bologna and canned beans in a quick one-pan supper perfect for seniors who didn't want multiple dishes to wash. Grandma sliced bologna into rounds and fried them in a skillet until the edges curled and browned. She opened a can of pork and beans and poured them into the same skillet with the bologna, stirring everything together. A diced onion went in for extra flavor. Everything heated through for a few minutes until bubbling. This single-serving skillet supper provided protein and fiber in an easy-to-eat form. The bologna added smoky, salty flavor while the beans made it filling and substantial. The entire meal cooked in one pan, meaning minimal cleanup afterward. She ate it straight from the skillet with a slice of bread on the side. This proved that one person could have a hot, satisfying supper without needing elaborate preparation. Farmhouse egg and potato scramble turned leftover boiled potato and fresh eggs into a hearty single-serving supper in minutes. Grandma diced one cold boiled potato into small cubes and fried them in butter until golden and crispy on the edges. She added diced onion and cooked until soft. She cracked 2 eggs directly into the skillet and scrambled everything together until the eggs were cooked through, but still moist. Salt and pepper seasoned it perfectly. This one-pan supper provided protein, starch, and vegetables all together without needing multiple dishes. The crispy potatoes added satisfying texture while the eggs made it rich and filling. The entire meal came together in under 15 minutes with just one pan to wash. This proved that simple ingredients from the pantry could create a complete, satisfying supper for one person without waste or fuss. Ground beef over mashed potatoes created a comforting single-serving supper when Grandma wanted something hearty that reminded her of family dinners. She browned a small amount of ground beef in a skillet, then added flour and milk to make thick gravy. Meanwhile, she heated instant mashed potatoes according to package directions for one serving. She spooned the mashed potatoes onto a plate and ladled the beef gravy generously over the top. This single serving provided protein and starch in an easy-to-eat form that didn't require much chewing. The warm, savory gravy made the potatoes rich and flavorful. The entire supper came together in under 20 minutes without creating waste. This proved that one person could enjoy comfort food classics without needing to cook for a crowd or face days of leftovers. Sweet cottage cheese supper combined cottage cheese and canned peaches in a no-cook meal perfect for hot summer evenings when turning on the stove felt unbearable. Grandma spooned cottage cheese into a bowl and topped it with drained canned peach slices. A sprinkle of cinnamon added warmth and spice. Sometimes she added a drizzle of the peach syrup for extra sweetness. This high-protein, no-cook supper required zero preparation and created no dishes to wash beyond the bowl and spoon. The cottage cheese provided complete protein and calcium, while the peaches added natural sweetness and vitamins. This light supper was easy to digest and didn't sit heavy in the stomach before bedtime. The entire meal came together in under 2 minutes. This proved that not every supper needed cooking to be satisfying, especially for one person eating alone who wanted something quick and refreshing. These 10 quick suppers prove that cooking for one doesn't mean sacrificing flavor or satisfaction. From scrambled eggs to cottage cheese, each recipe created complete meals without waste or fuss when enjoying a quiet evening at home. In the 1950s, when seniors lived alone and needed a warm, filling supper that required no leftovers, creamy tomato rice bowl became a quiet favorite. This dish uses just 5 ingredients: leftover or instant white rice, 1 can of condensed tomato soup, a tablespoon of butter, a pinch of black pepper, and a handful of shredded cheddar cheese. Grandmas would reheat yesterday's rice or cook a fresh single serving in 10 minutes, then warm the undiluted tomato soup in a small saucepan over medium heat, stirring in the butter until it melted into a smooth, glossy sauce. The rice went into a shallow bowl, the hot tomato butter mixture poured over the top, and the cheese sprinkled across so it softened in the steam. A few grinds of black pepper added subtle heat, and the whole meal was ready in under 15 minutes. The combination of sweet tomato, rich butter, and melted cheese turned plain rice into comfort food that felt almost luxurious, yet cost less than a quarter per serving. Seniors appreciated that every ingredient was shelf-stable: canned soup, boxed rice, a block of cheese in the icebox, so they could make this supper any evening without a trip to the store. The soft texture suited sensitive teeth, the portion controlled waste, and the warmth soothed both body and spirit. Creamy tomato rice bowl proved that a forgotten 5-ingredient supper could be both nourishing and kind to a solitary cook's budget and heart. Classic egg salad plate turned hard-boiled eggs into a cool, protein-rich supper perfect for warm evenings when cooking felt like too much effort for one person. Grandma hard-boiled 2 eggs, then peeled and chopped them into small pieces in a bowl. She added enough mayonnaise to bind everything together and make it creamy and spreadable, along with a small amount of diced onion for crunch and sharpness. A pinch of salt and pepper seasoned it perfectly without needing complicated spices or ingredients. She could serve this on toasted bread as a sandwich, on a bed of lettuce as a salad, or simply eaten from the bowl with crackers on the side for scooping. This no-cook supper required minimal preparation and created almost no cleanup beyond the bowl and spoon used for mixing. The eggs provided complete protein and healthy fats while being incredibly easy to digest and gentle on sensitive stomachs. The entire preparation took less than 10 minutes from start to finish once the eggs were boiled and cooled. Grandma often made extra and kept it refrigerated for the next day's lunch, stretching 2 eggs across multiple meals efficiently. This proved that simple egg salad could be a proper supper for one person, not just a lunch food, especially during summer months when hot meals felt too heavy and uncomfortable to eat before bedtime. Pan-fried meat patty scaled down the traditional meatloaf into a single-serving version that cooked quickly in a skillet without heating up the oven unnecessarily. Grandma mixed a small amount of ground beef with a beaten egg, some breadcrumbs or crushed crackers, and diced onion in a bowl. She shaped the mixture into one large flat patty about an inch thick that would cook evenly in the pan. The patty fried in a hot skillet for about 4 minutes per side until browned and cooked through completely. She made a quick gravy in the same pan by adding flour and milk to the drippings, creating a rich sauce without needing multiple pots or pans. This single-serving meat patty provided substantial protein in an easy-to-cut form that didn't require a sharp knife or strong hands to manage on the plate. The pan gravy made it moist and flavorful, preventing the meat from being dry or difficult to swallow. The entire supper came together in under 20 minutes with just one skillet to wash afterward. She served it with instant mashed potatoes or toast on the side, creating a complete meat and potatoes meal for one without creating days of leftovers. This proved that meatloaf could be adapted for singles without sacrificing flavor or satisfaction during quiet evenings at home. Sausage and potato pan fry combines sliced kielbasa and diced potatoes in a hearty one-skillet supper that satisfied without requiring multiple pots or complicated preparation steps. Grandma sliced kielbasa sausage into rounds about a 1/4 inch thick and diced one potato into small cubes so everything would cook at the same rate. She heated oil in a skillet and fried the potatoes first for about 10 minutes until they started turning golden and crispy on the edges. She added the kielbasa slices and diced onion, cooking everything together until the potatoes were tender inside and the sausage was browned and slightly caramelized around the edges. Salt and pepper seasoned it perfectly without needing elaborate spices. This single-serving skillet provided protein, starch, and vegetables all in one pan without needing side dishes or multiple components. The crispy potatoes added satisfying texture, while the sausage contributed smoky, savory flavor that made the dish feel substantial and filling. The entire meal came together in under 30 minutes with just one pan to wash, making cleanup quick and easy for seniors who didn't want to spend time at the sink. She ate it straight from the skillet, minimizing dishes even further. This proved that one person could enjoy a hearty, restaurant-quality meal at home without elaborate cooking or creating waste from unused portions. When Depression-era grandmas and 1950s seniors needed a meatless, single-serving supper that still felt hearty, skillet cheese and potato supper answered the call. This forgotten dish requires only 5 ingredients: 1 large potato, 1 small onion, 2 tablespoons of butter or lard, a ½ cup of shredded cheddar cheese, and salt and pepper to taste. The cook would heat the butter in a small cast-iron skillet over medium heat, layer the potato slices in overlapping rounds, scatter the diced onion on top, season with salt and pepper, then cover the skillet with a lid or plate and let everything cook for about 12 minutes, checking occasionally to prevent sticking. Once the potatoes turned golden and tender, the cheese went on in a thick blanket, the heat turned off, and the lid returned so the residual warmth melted the cheese into a gooey, savory topping. The result was a crispy, bottomed, creamy, centered one-pan meal that felt indulgent, yet cost pennies. Seniors loved that it required no oven, no multiple pots, and no complicated steps. Just a skillet, a handful of pantry staples, and 15 minutes of gentle attention. The cheese added protein and richness, the potato provided filling carbohydrates, and the onion lent a sweet, caramelized note. Skillet cheese and potato supper proved that cooking for one didn't mean settling for sad, flavorless food. With 5 simple ingredients and a bit of patience, a solitary cook could enjoy a warm, satisfying vintage supper that honored both frugality and flavor. These 15 forgotten suppers, from SOS on toast to skillet cheese and potato, show how 1950s grandmas and seniors transformed 5 humble ingredients into complete single-serving meals, proving that cooking alone never meant cooking without care, comfort, or the quiet dignity of a warm, homemade plate. Melted cheese on toast elevated simple ingredients into a warm, satisfying supper when Grandma wanted something comforting that required almost no effort or time. She made a simple cheese sauce by melting butter in a small saucepan, whisking in flour to create a roux, then gradually adding milk until smooth and thick. Shredded sharp cheddar cheese went in next, stirring until melted completely into the sauce. A spoonful of mustard and pinch of salt added depth and flavor. She toasted thick slices of bread until golden and placed them on a plate, then ladled the hot cheese sauce generously over the top until it soaked into the bread below. This classic dish was called Welsh rarebit in fancy cookbooks, but grandmas simply called it cheese toast and served it when they wanted something warm and filling without much fuss. The cheese sauce provided protein and calcium, while the toast gave satisfying carbohydrates and substance. The entire supper came together in under 15 minutes with just one saucepan to wash. She sometimes served it with sliced tomatoes on the side during summer months when fresh produce was available. This proved that simple cheese sauce over toast could be a proper supper, not just a snack, especially for one person eating alone who wanted comfort food without elaborate preparation. Flake tuna toast turned canned tuna into a warm, open-faced supper that felt more substantial than a cold sandwich when Grandma wanted something hot and satisfying. She drained 1 can of tuna and flaked it into a bowl, then mixed it with enough mayonnaise to bind it together, along with diced onion for crunch and flavor. She spread the tuna mixture on slices of bread, making sure it reached all the way to the edges. A slice of cheese went on top of each piece. The prepared toast went under the broiler for 3 to 4 minutes until the cheese melted and bubbled and the edges of the bread turned golden brown. She served it immediately while still hot and gooey. This open-faced tuna melt provided protein and calcium in an easy-to-eat form that didn't require much chewing or cutting with a knife. The hot melted cheese made the simple tuna salad feel more like a proper supper rather than just a cold lunch. The entire preparation took less than 10 minutes from start to finish. 1 can of tuna made 2 pieces of toast, providing a complete meal for one person without creating waste or leftovers that might spoil. This proved that canned fish could become an appealing hot supper with minimal effort when cooking for one during quiet evenings at home. Chinese-style egg soup brought international flavor to the single-serving supper table when Grandma wanted something different and light that didn't require elaborate ingredients or techniques. She heated chicken broth in a small pot until it reached a gentle simmer, then added a splash of soy sauce for salty, savory depth. She beat 1 egg in a small bowl, then slowly drizzled it into the simmering broth while stirring gently with a fork, creating delicate egg ribbons that floated throughout the soup. A chopped green onion went in at the end for color and freshness. This single-serving soup came together in under 10 minutes and provided complete protein in an easy-to-digest liquid form that was gentle on sensitive stomachs. The warm broth was soothing and comforting, especially during cold weather or when feeling under the weather. The egg ribbons were soft and tender, requiring no chewing effort. The entire meal could be eaten from one bowl with a spoon, minimizing cleanup and dishes to wash afterward. This proved that international flavors could be adapted for simple home cooking, providing variety in the diet without needing exotic ingredients or complicated techniques when cooking for one person who wanted something light yet satisfying. Creamy soft eggs turned scrambled eggs into something extra special when Grandma wanted a gentle, easy-to-digest supper that felt luxurious despite simple ingredients. She cracked 2 eggs into a bowl and beat them with a splash of cream or milk until well combined and slightly frothy. She melted butter in a small skillet over low heat, then poured in the egg mixture. She cooked the eggs slowly, stirring constantly with a fork, until they formed soft, creamy curds that were barely set and still quite moist. Salt and pepper seasoned them perfectly. These creamy scrambled eggs were incredibly tender and easy to swallow, perfect for seniors with difficulty chewing or digestion issues. The cream made them rich and satisfying without being heavy. She served them on buttered toast, creating a complete protein-rich supper in under 10 minutes. The slow cooking method created the softest, most luxurious texture possible, far superior to quickly scrambled eggs that could become rubbery and tough. This single-serving supper required just 1 pan and minimal cleanup. This proved that even the simplest ingredients like eggs could become something special when cooked with proper technique and attention, transforming an everyday food into a comforting supper for one person. Canned meat and egg breakfast dinner combined Spam and eggs in a hearty single-serving supper that provided substantial protein when Grandma wanted something filling and satisfying. She sliced Spam into thick pieces and fried them in a skillet until the edges were crispy and browned. She pushed the Spam to one side and cracked 2 eggs into the same pan, frying them in the flavorful fat left behind by the meat. The eggs cooked for about 3 minutes until the whites were set, but the yolks remained soft and runny. She served everything together on a plate with toast on the side for sopping up the runny yolks. This breakfast for dinner concept was popular among seniors living alone, because breakfast foods were often easier to prepare and digest than traditional heavy dinners. The Spam provided salty, smoky protein, while the eggs added richness and complete nutrition. The entire meal came together in under 15 minutes with just 1 pan to wash. 1 can of Spam lasted for multiple meals, making it economical and practical for singles who didn't want food waste. This proved that breakfast foods could be proper suppers, especially for one person who wanted something quick, filling, and familiar during quiet evenings at home alone. These 20 simple suppers prove that cooking for one doesn't mean sacrificing comfort or satisfaction. From cheese toast to egg soup, each recipe created complete meals perfect for enjoying alone or when a friend stopped by for tea. In the quiet kitchens of 1950s America, when seniors lived alone and needed a filling supper that stretched a single can into a complete meal, corned beef hash plate became a beloved staple that required no fresh meat, no complicated prep, and delivered both protein and comfort in under 20 minutes. This forgotten 5-ingredient dish uses 1 small can of corned beef hash, 1 egg, a tablespoon of butter or cooking oil, a slice of white bread for toasting, and a pinch of black pepper to finish. Grandmas would open the can, scoop the dense brick of seasoned beef and potato into a small cast-iron skillet greased with butter, then press it flat with a spatula and let it cook undisturbed over medium heat for about 8 minutes until the bottom formed a dark, crispy crust that crackled when you lifted the edge. Meanwhile, the bread went into the toaster, and when the hash had crisped, they'd flip it carefully or simply leave it crust side down, crack an egg directly onto the surface, cover the skillet with a lid, and let the steam cook the egg whites to opaque while the yolk stayed runny, creating a billet in sauce that would break and mingle with the salty, peppery hash when you cut into it with a fork. The whole supper came together on one plate: the golden hash cake, the soft yolked egg on top, the buttered toast on the side for sopping up any escaped yolk. Corned beef hash was cheap. A single can cost less than 30 cents and fed one person generously, required no refrigeration before opening, and could sit on a pantry shelf for months, making it ideal for seniors who shopped infrequently or lived far from stores. The texture was soft enough for sensitive teeth, the flavor rich and satisfying, and the presentation humble yet dignified. During the Depression and post-war years, when processed canned meats were celebrated as modern conveniences, this dish represented both thrift and self-sufficiency, proving that a solitary cook could enjoy a hot, hearty supper without waste, without fuss, and without needing anyone else at the
table. Corned beef hash plate remains a testament to the quiet resilience of vintage single-serving suppers, where every ingredient had a purpose and every meal honored the person eating it, even when the table was set for one and the evening stretched long and still ahead. Many seniors ate this same meal week after week, finding comfort in its familiar saltiness, its reliable warmth, and the way it never disappointed or required explanation. Just honest food for an honest appetite at the end of a long day.
When Depression-era grandmas and 1950s seniors needed an inexpensive source of protein that didn't require fresh fish or a trip to the butcher, simple fish cake emerged as a quiet hero of solo suppers, transforming a single can of salmon or mackerel into 2 golden pan-fried patties using just 4 other ingredients: 1 egg to bind, a handful of crushed saltine crackers for body, a teaspoon of finely diced onion for flavor, and a tablespoon of butter or oil for frying. The cook would drain the canned fish, dump it into a small bowl, flake it with a fork to break up any large chunks and remove any soft bones or skin, though many simply mashed everything together, as the tiny bones were edible and added calcium. Then crack in the egg, scatter in about a 1/4 cup of cracker crumbs, add the minced onion, and stir the mixture into a thick, moldable paste. Using damp hands to prevent sticking, they'd shape 2 round patties about 1/2 inch thick, heat the butter in a small skillet over medium heat until it foamed. Then gently lay the cakes in the pan and let them cook untouched for 3 to 4 minutes per side until a deep brown crust formed and the interior turned firm and hot. The result was a crispy-edged, tender-centered fish cake that tasted faintly of the sea, rich with egg and buttery crunch, mild enough to suit timid palates, yet substantial enough to anchor a full supper when paired with a boiled potato, a spoonful of canned peas, or a simple lettuce salad dressed with vinegar. Seniors appreciated that canned fish was shelf-stable, affordable. A can of pink salmon cost about 25 cents in the 1950s and already cooked, requiring no raw meat handling or fear of spoilage. The recipe produced exactly 2 servings, perfect for one supper and one next-day lunch, or a single generous meal with leftovers for breakfast. And the whole process, from opening the can to plating the finished cakes, took less than 15 minutes of active work. Simple fish cake embodied the resourcefulness of vintage solo cooking. No waste, no fancy equipment, no culinary training required, just a can, an egg, some crackers, and the knowledge that a warm, homemade supper was always within reach, even when cooking for one and the evening felt quiet and long. Some seniors squeezed a bit of lemon juice over the finished cakes or served them with a dollop of tartar sauce made from mayonnaise and pickle relish, small touches that elevated the humble dish into something special. Others ate the cakes plain, savoring the simple combination of fish and egg and butter, finding comfort in their plainness rather than needing embellishment. The dish worked equally well with canned tuna or even sardines if salmon was unavailable, and the basic ratio, 1 can of fish, 1 egg, enough crackers to bind, remained flexible enough to accommodate whatever was on hand, proving that vintage cooking valued adaptability and common sense over rigid recipes and expensive ingredients. In the era before brunch became fashionable and omelets carried French names, 1950s seniors living alone prepared a dish so simple it barely had a name: the folded cheese egg. A 5-ingredient supper that delivered protein, comfort, and satisfaction in under 10 minutes using. Nothing more than 2 eggs, a quarter cup of shredded cheddar cheese, a tablespoon of butter, a splash of milk, and a pinch of salt and pepper. The technique was straightforward, yet required a gentle touch. The cook would crack the eggs into a small bowl, add a teaspoon of milk and a pinch of salt, then whisk briskly with a fork until the yolks and whites blended into a smooth, pale yellow liquid. Butter went into a small, non-stick or well-seasoned skillet over medium-low heat, swirling to coat the bottom, and once it melted and began to shimmer, the beaten eggs poured in, spreading into a thin, even layer. Instead of scrambling, the cook let the eggs sit undisturbed for about 2 minutes, watching as the edges firmed and the center remained glossy and wet, then scattered the shredded cheese across one half of the circle, used a spatula to fold the other half over like a half moon, pressed gently to seal, and let the residual heat melt the cheese into a gooey, savory filling. The finished omelet slid onto a plate, its exterior golden and slightly browned, its interior soft and creamy, the cheese stretching in strings when you cut into it with the side of a fork. This was not the fluffy French omelet of restaurant kitchens, but the humble, homey folded egg of American solo suppers, often served with a slice of buttered toast, a few saltine crackers, or a small side of canned fruit. Seniors loved the folded cheese egg because it required no special skill, no multiple pans, and no waste. 2 eggs and a bit of cheese made a complete meal, cost less than 15 cents, and could be prepared even on days when arthritis made chopping or stirring painful. The dish proved that cooking for one didn't mean settling for cold cereal or skipping supper. With 5 ingredients and a few minutes of care, a solitary cook could enjoy a warm, nourishing plate that honored both tradition and independence, one gentle fold at a time. Many seniors ate this exact supper twice a week, sometimes adding a dash of hot sauce or a sprinkle of dried herbs to vary the flavor without complicating the process or adding extra cost. Others folded in a tablespoon of leftover cooked vegetables or a few bits of yesterday's roast chicken, stretching the eggs into an even more substantial meal while still honoring the spirit of simplicity and thrift that defined Depression-era cooking and carried forward into the resourceful habits of solo seniors in the 1950s and beyond. During the 1950s, when casseroles dominated American home cooking, but most recipes served 6 to 8, small-batch tuna bake offered seniors and solo cooks a scaled-down version that produced just 1 or 2 servings, eliminating waste and the sadness of eating the same leftovers for days. This forgotten 5-ingredient supper requires 1 small can of tuna packed in water, 1 cup of cooked egg noodles, a quarter cup of cream of mushroom soup thinned with 2 tablespoons of milk, a handful of frozen peas, and a tablespoon of breadcrumbs or crushed crackers for topping. The cook would boil a single serving of noodles in salted water for about 6 minutes, drain them, then toss them in a small buttered baking dish, often a Pyrex, custard cup, or a shallow 2-cup casserole, with the flaked tuna, the soup-milk mixture, and the peas, stirring gently so every noodle glistened with creamy sauce and every forkful promised a bit of fish and vegetable. The breadcrumb topping scattered over the surface, a tiny pat of butter dotted on top, and the whole dish slid into a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Just long enough for the edges to bubble, the crumbs to toast golden, and the interior to heat through, until a spoon sank into soft, savory comfort. Unlike the full-size tuna casseroles that required a 9 by 13-inch pan and fed a family, small-batch tuna bake respected the reality of solo dining: 1 person, 1 appetite, 1 portion. The finished casserole emerged from the oven steaming and fragrant, the mushroom soup adding earthy richness, the tuna providing lean protein, the peas contributing a pop of color and sweetness, and the noodles binding it all into a cohesive, spoonable meal. Seniors appreciated that every ingredient was pantry-stable or freezer-friendly: canned tuna, canned soup, dried noodles, frozen peas, so they could assemble this supper without a last-minute grocery run, and the small batch meant no sad Tupperware containers languishing in the refrigerator. Small batch tuna bake proved that vintage casseroles could adapt to solitary life, offering warmth, flavor, and the quiet dignity of a proper homemade meal, even when cooking for one and the evening felt long and still. Some cooks added a pinch of dried dill or parsley to the topping, or stirred in a teaspoon of lemon juice to brighten the flavor, small tweaks that made the dish feel intentional and cared for. Others substituted canned chicken or salmon for the tuna, swapped green beans for peas, or used cream of celery soup instead of mushroom, proving the recipe's flexibility and the enduring principle that good solo cooking values adaptation over rigid adherence to a single method or ingredient list. One-pot mac and cheese became a go-to supper that required no draining, no baking, and no fuss, delivering creamy, cheesy noodles. In a single saucepan using just 5 ingredients: 1 cup of elbow macaroni, 2 cups of water, 1 cup of whole milk, 1½ cups of shredded sharp cheddar cheese, and a tablespoon of butter. The magic of this dish lay in its method. Instead of boiling the macaroni separately and making a separate cheese sauce, the cook combined the raw pasta, water, and a generous pinch of salt in a medium saucepan, brought it to a rolling boil over high heat, then reduced the flame to medium and let it simmer, stirring occasionally with a wooden spoon until the pasta absorbed most of the liquid and turned tender, about 8 to 10 minutes depending on the brand. At that point, the milk and butter went in together, stirred gently until the butter melted and the mixture became creamy and loose. Then the shredded cheese folded in off the heat, melting into a smooth, glossy sauce that clung to every elbow and pooled in the bottom of the pot. The cost per serving hovered around 20 cents in 1950s dollars, a fraction of what restaurant macaroni cost and far cheaper than letting a large batch of leftovers go to waste in the refrigerator. Cleanup was minimal. 1 pot, 1 spoon, 1 bowl, all done in minutes. One-pot mac and cheese embodied the quiet genius of vintage solo cooking. No waste, no complexity, no need for an audience or approval. Just a warm, creamy bowl of comfort that proved cooking for yourself was an act of self-care and dignity, not loneliness or deprivation. A small ritual that honored the cook even when the table was set for one, and the evening stretched long and still ahead. Many seniors kept a box of elbow macaroni and a block of cheese on hand at all times, knowing this meal could rescue any evening when energy or appetite flagged. Some added a pinch of dry mustard powder or a dash of paprika to deepen the cheese flavor, while others stirred in a handful of frozen peas or a spoonful of canned tomatoes to turn the dish into a more complete supper without adding complexity or cost. These 25 forgotten suppers, from SOS on toast to one-pot mac and cheese, reveal how 1950s seniors transformed 5 humble ingredients into dignified, single-serving meals, proving that cooking alone never meant cooking without warmth, flavor, or the quiet pride of a homemade plate. At day's end, navy bean soup rose to the occasion, a Depression-era staple that used just 5 ingredients to produce a thick, creamy, protein-rich pot of comfort: 1 cup of dried navy beans, 4 cups of water, 1 small onion diced fine, a tablespoon of butter or vegetable oil for flavor, and salt and pepper to season generously. The night before, the cook would rinse the beans under cold running water, picking out any small stones or shriveled beans, then cover them with fresh water in a bowl and leave them to soak on the counter overnight, which softened their skins and reduced the cooking time significantly. In the morning or early afternoon, the soaked beans were drained and went into a medium saucepan with the 4 cups of fresh water, the finely diced onion and the butter, brought to a gentle boil over medium-high heat. Then the heat reduced to low and the pot left to simmer partially covered for about 90 minutes to 2 hours, stirring occasionally to prevent sticking until the beans broke down into a thick porridge-like consistency and the broth turned creamy white from the released starches. A potato masher or the back of a wooden spoon could mash some of the beans against the side of the pot to thicken the soup even further, and a generous pinch of salt and several grinds of black pepper brought out the mild, earthy sweetness of the beans and balanced the richness. The finished soup filled a bowl with steaming, soul-warming substance, its texture smooth yet hearty, its flavor simple but deeply satisfying, especially when paired with a thick slice of buttered bread or a handful of saltine crackers for dipping and crumbling into the broth. Some added a bay leaf during cooking or a splash of vinegar at the end to brighten the flavor, small touches that made the soup feel more intentional and refined without adding cost or complexity to the basic recipe. Others stirred in a handful of chopped carrots or celery during the last 30 minutes of cooking, turning the simple bean soup into a more varied vegetable stew, while still honoring the 5-ingredient framework that defined Depression-era resourcefulness and solo senior cooking in the 1950s. In the 1950s, when condensed soups dominated pantry shelves and home cooks sought quick, warming suppers, many seniors discovered that a single can of cream of mushroom soup, thinned and enriched with a few simple additions, could become a complete, satisfying meal in itself rather than just a casserole ingredient. This forgotten 5-ingredient supper uses 1 10.5-ounce can of condensed cream of mushroom soup, 1 soup can of whole milk, a tablespoon of butter, a handful of saltine crackers for serving, and a pinch of black pepper and optional dried parsley for garnish. The preparation was almost embarrassingly simple. The cook opened the can, spooned the thick beige paste into a small saucepan, then whisked in the milk gradually, stirring to break up any lumps, and added the butter, which melted into glossy richness as the soup warmed over medium heat for about 5 minutes, never quite boiling, but steaming gently and thickening slightly as it heated. A few grinds of black pepper and a shake of dried parsley transformed the humble canned soup into something that felt homemade, and the whole pot poured into a wide, shallow bowl, served alongside a stack of crackers for crumbling on top or dipping into the creamy, mushroom-flecked broth. On cold nights or days when arthritis flared and standing at the stove felt impossible, cream of mushroom soup offered a lifeline. Proof that a nourishing, hot supper was always within reach, even when energy and appetite ran low. This dish embodied the pragmatic grace of vintage solo cooking, where canned convenience met genuine comfort, and no one judged you for finding joy in simplicity. Some seniors added a handful of leftover cooked rice or noodles to the soup to make it more filling, or stirred in a spoonful of sour cream at the end for extra richness. Small variations that personalized the dish without abandoning its fundamental ease and economy. Others crumbled a slice of toasted bread directly into the bowl, letting it soak up the broth and turn soft and savory, creating a texture somewhere between soup and porridge that felt deeply comforting on long winter evenings when cooking felt like a burden rather than a pleasure and simplicity. Became its own kind of luxury. Creamed peas on toast became a beloved meatless meal that combined 5 humble ingredients into a dish that felt almost luxurious. 1 cup of canned or frozen green peas, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour, 3/4 cup of whole milk, and 2 slices of toasted white bread. The technique was simple but required attention. The cook melted the butter in a small saucepan over medium heat, whisked in the flour to form a pale roux, then gradually poured in the milk while stirring constantly to prevent lumps, cooking the mixture for about 3 minutes until it thickened into a smooth, velvety white sauce. The peas, drained if canned or briefly cooked if frozen, folded into the sauce, and a pinch of salt and white pepper seasoned the whole pot, which simmered gently for another 2 minutes so the peas heated through and absorbed the creamy, buttery flavor. Meanwhile, the bread toasted until golden and crisp, then laid side by side on a plate, and the hot creamed peas ladled generously over the top, soaking into the toast and creating a contrast of textures: soft, sweet peas, rich, silky sauce, and crisp, buttery bread. Seniors appreciated that this supper was soft enough for dentures or sensitive teeth, mild enough for delicate stomachs, and filling enough to carry them through an evening without needing seconds. The cost per serving was negligible. A can of peas cost about 10 cents, a splash of milk and a bit of flour pennies more, and the entire dish came together in under 15 minutes with just 1 pot and a toaster. Creamed peas on toast proved that vegetarian suppers didn't have to be bland or unsatisfying. With a proper white sauce and good bread, even a can of peas could become a meal worth savoring. A quiet reminder that cooking for one deserved the same care and flavor as cooking for a crowd. Some seniors added a pinch of dried thyme or a dash of nutmeg to the white sauce, making it a template for dozens of simple, single-serving suppers that honored the cook's time, budget, and appetite without demanding skills or ingredients beyond what most pantries already held in quiet readiness. Soft cornmeal mush with butter served as both breakfast and supper. A 5-ingredient dish so simple it barely qualified as a recipe, yet so nourishing and comforting it sustained generations through hard times. 1 cup of yellow cornmeal, 4 cups of water, a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of butter, and optional milk or sugar for serving. The cook would bring the salted water to a rolling boil in a medium saucepan, then slowly whisk in the cornmeal in a thin, steady stream, stirring constantly to prevent lumps, and reduce the heat to low, continuing to stir as the mixture thickened into a smooth, porridge-like consistency over the course of about 5 minutes. The texture was soft and yielding, perfect for those with dental issues or difficulty swallowing, and the cornmeal provided complex carbohydrates and a gentle, earthy sweetness that felt grounding and wholesome. Leftover mush could be poured into a loaf pan, chilled until firm, then sliced and fried the next morning for a crispy breakfast, but many seniors made only a single serving: 1 cup of meal to 4 cups of water, eating it fresh and hot from the pot. Cornmeal cost pennies per pound and kept indefinitely in a cool, dry cupboard, making this one of the most economical suppers imaginable. Soft cornmeal mush with butter embodied the quiet dignity of vintage solo cooking. No pretense, no waste, no apology, just a warm bowl of something real, made with care, eaten alone but never lonely. Some seniors stirred in a handful of raisins or a spoonful of molasses while the mush cooked, adding sweetness and depth without complicating the basic recipe. Others topped the finished bowl with a drizzle of honey or a spoonful of jam, turning the humble porridge into a simple dessert that satisfied both hunger and the need for something sweet at the end of a long day. The dish also adapted to savory variations. A beaten egg stirred in during the last minute of cooking created a richer, more protein-dense meal, while a handful of shredded cheese folded in at the end turned the mush into a comforting, savory supper that felt substantial and satisfying without requiring meat or expensive ingredients, proving once again that Depression-era cooking valued versatility, economy, and the quiet resilience of cooks who made do with what they had. warm milk and crackers, a 5-ingredient dish that was less a recipe than a ritual, combining 1 cup of whole milk, a teaspoon of sugar or honey, a pinch of salt, a handful of saltine or soda crackers, and a small pat of butter. The preparation was almost meditative. The cook poured the milk into a small saucepan, added the sugar and salt, and warmed it gently over low heat, stirring occasionally until it steamed and tiny bubbles formed around the edges, but never allowing it to boil, which would curdle the proteins and ruin the silky texture. The warm milk poured into a wide, shallow bowl, the butter floated on top and melted into golden swirls, and the crackers, 4 to 6 squares, either crumbled directly into the milk or laid on a small plate alongside for dipping, softening into tender, salty bites that dissolved on the tongue. This was not a meal for hunger, but for comfort, for the quiet closing of a long day, for the warmth that spread from the stomach to the chest, and the gentle drowsiness that followed. Seniors who had grown up during the Depression remembered warm milk and bread as a common supper, and crackers were simply the modern, shelf-stable version, equally cheap and equally satisfying. The dish required no teeth, no strong digestion, no effort beyond heating a pan and stirring, making it ideal for the very old, the very tired, or those recovering from illness. The cost was almost nothing. A cup of milk, a few crackers, a spoonful of sugar, and the time from stove to table less than 5 minutes. Warm milk and crackers closed this list of 30 forgotten suppers with a reminder that cooking for one was never about complexity or presentation, but about sustaining the body and honoring the self, one warm, gentle spoonful at a time. Some seniors added a drop of vanilla extract to the milk, a tiny indulgence that made the drink feel special without adding cost or calories. Others sprinkled a pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg on top, spices that evoked memories of childhood and holiday baking even in the simplest weeknight supper. The ritual of heating milk, the slow stirring, the careful pouring, the deliberate crumbling of crackers all became acts of self-care, small gestures that said, even when alone, even when tired, even when the world felt indifferent, you deserved warmth, nourishment, and the quiet dignity of a proper meal, however simple it might be. Warm milk and crackers proved that the most forgotten suppers were often the most essential, the ones that asked nothing but gave everything: comfort, sustenance, and the gentle reminder that cooking for yourself was an act of love, not loneliness, a small light at the end of every long day. These 30 forgotten suppers weren't just recipes, they were quiet acts of resilience, small rituals of self-respect that proved cooking for one never meant settling for less. Every can of tuna transformed into golden fish cakes, every pot of navy beans simmered into creamy comfort. Every folded cheese egg plated with care carried the same message: you matter, even when the table is set for one. The seniors who cooked these suppers understood something we've forgotten, that feeding yourself well is an act of dignity, not desperation. They didn't apologize for eating alone or feel embarrassed by their simple meals. They knew that a warm bowl of cornmeal mush, a plate of creamed peas on toast, or soft scrambled eggs was enough, not just to fill the stomach, but to honor the body and mark the end of the day with care. These 5-ingredient suppers asked for so little, yet gave so much: warmth on cold nights, protein for tired bodies, flavor without fuss, and the quiet satisfaction of a homemade meal that cost pennies but felt priceless. If you're cooking for one today, these suppers offer permission to keep it simple, to use what you have, and to honor your appetite without apology, because every meal matters and every person eating alone deserves a plate that says, "You are worth this warmth."